There is something quietly unfolding behind the scenes of your connection, something that has been building without your direct awareness, and even though you may not see clear signs yet, you can feel that something is shifting. It's not loud or obvious, not something that suddenly interrupts your day, but more like a subtle change in energy, a quiet sense that something is about to happen. This feeling is not random. It is connected to your soulmate, who has entered a phase where silence is no longer enough for them. For a long time, things may have felt still, distant, or even uncertain, as if nothing was really moving forward. From your perspective, it may have seemed like everything had settled into a quiet space where nothing significant was happening. Before we dive into today's word, I want to thank our coffee partners. We are currently working toward a $120 goal to keep this ministry running and improve our quality. If this channel has been a blessing to you, please check the link in the description or comment box to support. Now, let's get into today's devotion. But what you could not see was what was happening internally for them. Because while things appeared calm on the surface, their thoughts had begun to shift in a way they did not expect. At first, it started subtly, almost unnoticeably. A small thought about you, a brief memory that appeared without warning, something that seemed insignificant enough to ignore. They may have brushed it off, assuming it was just a random moment, something that would pass quickly like many other thoughts do. But it didn't pass. Instead, it returned. And not just once, but repeatedly. Each time it came back, it carried a little more weight. What once felt like a passing thought began to feel more intentional, more present. And with each repetition, it became harder for them to ignore. This is how the shift began. Not with something dramatic, but with something persistent. Because when a thought continues to return without effort, it demands attention. And eventually, they had to stop and acknowledge it. As they allowed themselves to think about you more deeply, more memories began to surface. Not just one or two, but a series of moments that had quietly shaped the connection between you. Conversations that once felt simple now stood out with new meaning. The way you communicated, the ease with which ideas flowed, the comfort that existed without needing explanation, these were things they didn't fully analyze at the time. When something feels natural, people rarely question it. They accept it as normal, as something that will always be there. But when that presence is no longer constant, when silence replaces interaction, those same moments begin to stand out in a completely different way. And that is exactly what is happening now. Your absence has created a space where everything that once felt ordinary is now being seen with clarity. Silence has removed the distractions, the routine, the assumption that things would continue as they were. And in that space, the truth has begun to reveal itself. At first, this realization may have felt confusing to them. They may not have understood why their thoughts kept returning to you, why certain memories felt stronger than they should, why your absence felt more noticeable than expected. They may have tried to distract themselves, focusing on other things, other people, other responsibilities, hoping that the feeling would fade. But it didn't. Because this is not something temporary. It is something real that is only now being fully understood. The more they reflect, the more they begin to recognize a pattern. It's not just one moment that stands out, it's many. And when many moments point in the same direction, it becomes clear that what they shared with you was not something random or replaceable. It had consistency, it had meaning, and it carried a level of authenticity that is not easy to find. This is where the shift becomes deeper. It is no longer about remembering you, it is about understanding you. Understanding what the connection meant, what made it different, and most importantly, what it meant to them personally. And with that understanding comes a new awareness, one that begins to change how they see everything. They begin to realize that what they had with you was not something they fully appreciated at the time. Not because they didn't care, but because they didn't see it clearly. And now that they are seeing it clearly, everything feels different. This realization does not come all at once. It builds gradually, through repeated thoughts, through memories that continue to surface, through a growing sense that something important has been left unfinished. They may begin to question themselves, wondering why they didn't recognize this sooner, why they assumed there would always be more time, why they allowed things to become silent without trying to understand what was happening. These questions do not have immediate answers, but they create something important: reflection. And reflection is what turns awareness into something deeper. Because once someone begins to see clearly what they didn't see before, they cannot return to the state of not knowing. They can try to ignore it, but it will continue to return, stronger each time, until it is acknowledged. You may not see any of this happening yet. From your side, everything may look the same. There may be no message, no clear sign, no direct indication that anything has changed. But internal shifts rarely show themselves immediately. They build quietly, beneath the surface, until they reach a point where they can no longer stay hidden. And that is exactly where this is heading. What you are feeling, that subtle sense that something is about to happen, is connected to that process. Because as their awareness grows, it is moving closer to becoming something visible, something that will no longer remain hidden behind silence. Right now, they are still in the stage of realization, still processing, still connecting the pieces. But they are no longer the same as they were before this silence began. Their perspective has changed. Their awareness has deepened. And the way they see you is no longer casual or undefined. It is becoming clear. And once something becomes clear on that level, it does not stay quiet for long. As this realization continues to grow inside them, it begins to take up more space in their thoughts, no longer something they can casually ignore or push aside, but something that follows them consistently throughout their day, quietly demanding attention. What once felt like occasional memories has now become something constant, something that appears in moments when they least expect it, pulling their focus away from whatever they are doing and bringing them back to you again and again. At first, they may still try to convince themselves that it doesn't mean anything serious, that it's just a temporary reaction to your absence, something that will eventually fade with time. They may try to distract themselves, immersing themselves in work, conversations, or other responsibilities, hoping that if they stay busy enough, the thoughts will stop returning. But instead of fading, the thoughts become more persistent. They begin to show up not just in quiet moments, but even when they are engaged in something else. And that's when they start to understand that this is not something they can simply ignore. It is something they need to face. As they begin to give their thoughts more attention, more memories start to surface. Not just random ones, but meaningful ones, moments that once felt simple but now feel important. Conversations where communication flowed naturally, where there was ease and understanding without effort. Times when laughter came without forcing it, when ideas were shared freely, when being around you felt comfortable in a way that didn't require explanation. These moments begin to stand out in a new way, not because they changed, but because their perspective has changed. They are now looking at those experiences with a level of awareness that wasn't there before. And this shift in perspective is what begins to turn reflection into realization. They start to recognize that what they had with you was not something ordinary. It was not just another connection or interaction that could be easily replaced. It had depth, authenticity, and a natural rhythm that made it different. And now, without that presence in their daily life, that difference becomes more noticeable than ever. They may begin to compare their interactions with others, not intentionally, but naturally. Conversations may feel less engaging, less meaningful, or lacking the same sense of connection. Not because others are lacking, but because what they experienced with you set a certain standard that they didn't fully recognize at the time. And now that it's no longer there, that contrast becomes clear. This is where the emotional weight begins to grow. Because once someone recognizes the value of something they may be losing or have already lost, they cannot simply move forward as if nothing changed. They begin to feel something deeper, something that goes beyond memory. It becomes a realization tied to emotion. And that emotion begins to create internal pressure. They may start asking themselves questions now, not just about the connection, but about their own actions. Why didn't they express more? Why did they assume there would always be time? Why did they let things become silent without trying to understand what was happening? These questions may not have immediate answers, but they serve an important purpose. They bring awareness to their own role in how things unfolded. And that awareness is what begins to turn realization into something stronger, into intention. Because once someone sees clearly what they didn't see before, they naturally begin to feel the need to do something about it. To act differently now that they understand. But even as this intention begins to form, there is still hesitation. Because acting means stepping into uncertainty. It means not knowing how you will respond, not knowing whether things can be rebuilt, not knowing whether too much time has passed. And that uncertainty creates fear. They may find themselves going back and forth, one moment feeling certain that they should reach out, the next moment pulling back because they are unsure how to approach it. This internal conflict is part of the process. It shows that what they are feeling is real and meaningful. Because when something truly matters, the decision to act is never taken lightly. It carries risk, vulnerability, and the possibility of rejection. But even with this hesitation, the feeling does not go away. In fact, it becomes stronger. Because once awareness reaches this level, it cannot be reversed. They cannot return to the state of not knowing. They can delay action, but they cannot remove the understanding that has already formed. And that understanding continues to push them forward, slowly but steadily. They may begin to imagine what it would be like to reach out, how the conversation might begin, what they would say, how you might respond. These thoughts may feel uncertain, but they also feel necessary. Because the idea of doing nothing is starting to feel more uncomfortable than the idea of taking a risk. And that is where the shift begins. When the discomfort of silence becomes greater than the fear of action, everything starts to change. You may still not see any visible signs of this yet, but internally, they are no longer in the same place. They are moving from reflection into intention. They are no longer just thinking about what happened, they are beginning to think about what to do next. And that transition is important, because once someone begins to think in terms of action instead of just awareness, it is only a matter of time before something happens. The silence that once separated you is now becoming the very reason they feel pulled to move toward you again, not out of impulse, but out of a realization that has taken time to form and is now too strong to ignore. As this realization continues to deepen, it begins to reach a point where it no longer feels like something they can quietly manage within themselves, and this is where everything starts to shift in a more intense and undeniable way. What once felt like thoughts they could control has now turned into something constant, something that follows them throughout their day, something that refuses to stay in the background no matter how much they try to focus on other things. They may find themselves losing focus more often, drifting into memories without even realizing it, replaying conversations and moments in their mind as if they are trying to understand them from a completely new perspective. And that is exactly what is happening. They are not just remembering, they are reinterpreting everything with a level of awareness they didn't have before. It's no longer about recalling what happened, it's about understanding what it meant. And that difference changes everything. The more they reflect, the more they begin to feel the absence of what you brought into their life. It's not just about missing you, it's about noticing what is no longer there. The ease of communication, the natural flow of conversations, the comfort of being understood without needing to explain everything, these were things they didn't stop to analyze at the time, because they felt normal. But now, in your absence, they stand out clearly. Silence has a way of amplifying what once felt ordinary, and that amplification is what is making everything feel more intense for them now. This awareness begins to affect them in ways they didn't expect. It shows up in their mood, in their energy, even in the way they interact with others. They may continue their routine, continue talking to people, continue moving through their daily life as if everything is the same. But internally, something has changed completely. They are no longer fully present in what they are doing, because part of their attention is constantly pulled back to you. This is what happens when something meaningful is left unresolved. It does not fade away quietly. It lingers, it grows, and it continues to demand attention until it is acknowledged. At this stage, the realization has moved beyond simple awareness. It has become emotional. It carries weight. They are no longer just thinking about what they had with you. They are feeling what it meant. And when something is felt on that level, it creates a kind of internal pressure that cannot remain contained forever. It is not loud or chaotic, but it is persistent. It follows them in quiet moments, in pauses between tasks, in times when they are alone and there is nothing to distract them. And in those moments, the truth becomes even clearer. They begin to understand that what they had with you was not something ordinary. It had depth, authenticity, and a natural connection that is not easy to find. And now, without it, everything feels slightly different. They may try to replace that feeling by engaging more with others, by seeking new interactions, by trying to create new connections. But instead of replacing it, those efforts only highlight the difference. Conversations may feel surface level compared to what they experienced with you. Interactions may feel less meaningful, less engaging. And this comparison is not something they are doing consciously, it happens naturally, because once someone experiences a certain kind of connection, it becomes a reference point. And now, everything else is being measured against that reference. This is where the realization becomes undeniable. They can no longer tell themselves that what they had with you was simple or replaceable. They see clearly now that it was something different, something that stood out without them fully understanding it at the time. And realizing that they may have lost that creates a strong emotional response. Not just sadness, but regret. Regret for not seeing it sooner, regret for not appreciating it more, regret for not acting when they had the chance. These feelings begin to build on each other, creating a sense of urgency. They may start asking themselves deeper questions now. Why didn't they say what they felt when they had the chance? Why did they assume there would always be more time? Why did they let things become silent without trying to understand what was happening? These questions may not have immediate answers, but they serve an important purpose. They bring awareness to their own role in how things unfolded. And with that awareness comes a desire to change it, to do something differently now that they understand what they didn't before. This is where the internal pressure begins to turn into intention. It is no longer just about thinking or feeling, it is about wanting to act. But even at this stage, there is still hesitation. Because acting means stepping into uncertainty. It means not knowing how you will respond, not knowing whether things can be rebuilt, not knowing whether too much time has passed. And that uncertainty creates fear. But the difference now is that the fear of doing nothing is becoming stronger than the fear of taking that risk. They begin to feel that if they don't act, they may regret it even more. That they may always wonder what could have happened if they had tried. And that feeling is what begins to push them forward. You may not see this happening, but it is already shaping their next move. They are no longer passive in their thoughts. They are actively considering action, even if they have not taken it yet. They may start imagining what it would be like to reach out, how the conversation would begin, what they would say, how they would explain everything they have been feeling. These thoughts may feel overwhelming, because there is a lot they want to express, and they may not know how to say it in a simple way. But even with that uncertainty, the intention is there. And intention is the first step toward action. This is the stage where everything begins to move toward a decision. The silence that once kept them still is now pushing them forward. The absence that once created distance is now creating a pull, drawing them back toward something they now understand more clearly than ever before. And once someone reaches this point, it is only a matter of time before that internal shift becomes something visible, something real, something that changes everything between you. As everything inside them continues to build, it reaches a point where it can no longer remain hidden, and this is where the shift becomes stronger, more intense, and much closer to turning into real action. Up until now, they have been carrying everything within themselves, processing their thoughts, going back and forth between hesitation and realization, trying to make sense of what they feel without having to express it outwardly. But emotions, when they reach a certain level, do not stay contained forever. They begin to push outward. They begin to demand expression. And that is exactly what is happening now. The silence that once felt manageable has now turned into something heavy, something that follows them constantly, something that reminds them every single day that something important has been left unresolved. It is no longer just the absence of communication, it has become a presence of unanswered emotions. Every day that passes without action adds more weight to that feeling. They may begin to feel restless, unable to fully relax, unable to focus on anything for too long without their thoughts drifting back to you. It feels like something is unfinished, something is waiting, something that cannot be ignored anymore. This restlessness is not random, it is the result of everything they have been holding back finally reaching the surface. At this stage, they are no longer asking themselves whether they should do something. That question has already been answered internally. Instead, they are now asking how they will do it. The decision to act is forming clearly, but the approach still feels uncertain. They may start planning what they want to say, going over different possibilities, trying to find the right words that will express everything they have been feeling without creating confusion or misunderstanding. But this is not easy for them, because what they feel is not simple. It is layered, built from memories, realizations, emotions, and even a sense of regret. Trying to put all of that into words feels overwhelming. They may start writing something and then stop, feeling like it doesn't fully capture what they want to say. They may imagine different scenarios, different outcomes, different reactions from you, trying to prepare themselves for what might happen. This process may repeat multiple times, because they want to get it right. They understand that this moment matters. They know that whatever they do next could change everything between you. And that awareness makes them careful, but it does not stop them. Because even though hesitation is still present, it is no longer strong enough to hold them back completely. The urge to act continues to grow stronger with each passing moment. The silence is no longer comfortable, it feels like avoidance. And they are starting to realize that avoiding it will not make the feeling disappear. It will only make it stronger. You may begin to notice subtle signs of this shift before anything direct happens. They may become more present in indirect ways, checking in quietly, showing curiosity, paying attention from a distance, or finding small ways to stay connected without fully stepping forward yet. These are early signs that the internal shift is beginning to show externally. They are testing the space, trying to understand how things might unfold if they take that next step. At the same time, their emotions are becoming clearer than ever. What once felt confusing is now defined. They know that what they feel is real. They know that the connection mattered. And they know that ignoring it is no longer an option. This clarity removes the biggest barrier they had before, uncertainty. And once uncertainty is gone, action becomes inevitable. It may still take a little time, but the direction is already set. They are no longer moving away from you, they are moving toward you, even if it is happening gradually. The intensity of what they are feeling may also surprise them, because they may not have expected it to reach this level. They may not have realized how much your presence affected them until it was no longer there in the same way. And now that they see it clearly, it changes everything about how they view the situation. This is no longer something casual or temporary. It is something that requires attention, honesty, and courage. And that is why what they are about to do will not be small or insignificant. It will carry the weight of everything they have been holding inside. It may feel sudden when it happens, but it is not sudden at all. It is the result of everything that has been building over time. Right now, they are standing at the edge of that action. The hesitation is still there, but it is weakening with every passing thought. The realization is strong. The emotions are clear. And the need to act is becoming impossible to ignore. What comes next is not a question of if, it is a question of when, because they have already reached the point where staying silent is no longer something they can continue doing. Now everything inside them has reached a point where holding back no longer feels possible, and this is where the energy becomes intense, almost overwhelming, because what they have been suppressing for so long is now pushing to be expressed all at once. Up until this moment, they have tried to manage it, to control their thoughts, to delay action by convincing themselves that they needed more time, more clarity, or the right moment to say something. But emotions do not wait for perfect timing. When something meaningful is left unspoken for too long, it builds pressure, and that pressure eventually demands release. That is exactly where they are now. The silence that once felt like distance has now turned into urgency. It is no longer something they can sit with comfortably. It feels like something that needs to be broken, something that needs to be addressed before it becomes a permanent loss. And this is what shifts everything. They may suddenly feel a strong wave of clarity, as if all the thoughts they have been carrying finally come together into one undeniable truth: you matter to them more than they ever allowed themselves to admit. And once that truth becomes clear, it becomes impossible to ignore or push aside. This is the moment where hesitation begins to collapse. The fear of reaching out, the fear of being vulnerable, the fear of not knowing how you will respond. All of that still exists, but it is no longer stronger than the need to act. In fact, the fear of doing nothing has now become greater. Because doing nothing means accepting that this connection might fade completely, and they are no longer willing to let that happen without trying. This is the turning point. When someone becomes more afraid of losing something than of risking their comfort, action becomes inevitable. And that action may not look the way you expect. It may feel sudden, intense, or even out of character for them. Because when emotions build for a long time, they do not come out slowly or perfectly, they come out all at once, with intensity and urgency. This is why what they are about to do may feel shocking from your perspective. Not because it is irrational, but because it carries so much emotion that it breaks the pattern of how they usually behave. They may reach out in a way that is more direct than you have ever seen before. They may express things they once avoided, say things they never said, or take a step they once would have been too cautious to take. This is not random, it is the result of everything they have been holding back finally reaching the surface. At the same time, there is vulnerability beneath that action. Even if they appear confident or bold, there is uncertainty underneath. They do not know how you will respond. They do not know if the connection can be rebuilt or if too much time has passed. They do not know whether you feel the same way now as you did before. And that uncertainty creates risk. But they are willing to take that risk now, because staying silent feels like a bigger loss. You may also notice a difference in their energy when they reach out. There may be urgency in their words, a depth in their tone, a level of honesty that feels different from how they communicated before. This is because they are no longer holding back. They are no longer filtering everything through caution. They are expressing what they feel as it is, without trying to control how it appears. And that rawness is what makes the moment feel intense. It is not just communication, it is an emotional release that has been building for a long time. But this moment is not only about them, it is also about you. Because while they are acting from a place of built-up emotion, you are in a position where you can choose how to respond with clarity. You are not required to match their urgency. You are not required to react immediately or get pulled into the intensity of the moment. Your strength lies in staying grounded, in understanding what is happening without losing your balance in it. Their action is the result of everything they have been holding inside. Your response does not need to come from the same place. You have the ability to observe, to process, and to respond in a way that aligns with your own clarity. And that is what will shape what happens next. This moment may feel unexpected, emotional, even overwhelming, but it is also a moment of truth. A moment where everything that was hidden is now visible. And once it becomes visible, it changes the direction of everything that follows, because now both of you are no longer operating from uncertainty, but from something that has finally been brought into the open. Now everything reaches the moment where what has been building inside them finally crosses into reality, and this is where the entire dynamic between you begins to transform in a way that can no longer be ignored or reversed. Up until now, everything has existed within them, the thoughts, the memories, the realizations, the emotional pressure that kept growing with every passing day. But once they take that step, once they express what they have been holding back, all of that internal energy becomes external. It is no longer something they carry alone. It becomes something shared again, something that now exists between both of you in real time. And that shift changes everything. What once felt distant, quiet, and undefined now becomes immediate, present, and real. You may experience this moment as sudden, unexpected, or even overwhelming, especially if you had adjusted to the silence and no longer expected anything to change. But what feels sudden to you has been forming inside them for a long time. It has been building through repeated thoughts, through memories that refuse to fade, through realizations that became clearer with time. And now, it has reached a point where it could no longer stay hidden. When they finally act, it may not come out in a perfectly structured or controlled way. They may struggle to express everything clearly, because there is so much behind what they feel. There are layers, memories, realizations, emotions, and even regret, that have all combined into this one moment. But even if the words are not perfect, the intention behind them will be real. And that is what matters. You may notice a difference in how they approach you. There may be urgency, a depth in their tone, a level of honesty that feels different from how they communicated before. This is because they are no longer approaching you from a place of uncertainty, they are approaching you from a place of realization. They now understand what they didn't before, and that understanding is what gives their actions weight. At the same time, this moment brings you into a position where your awareness becomes just as important as their action. Because while they are acting from emotional buildup, you are stepping into this situation from a place of clarity. You have experienced the silence in your own way. You have had time to reflect, to observe, to understand the connection from your perspective. And that means your response will not come from the same place as theirs. This is what allows you to remain grounded, even when the moment feels intense. You may feel a rush of emotion when they reach out. Surprise, curiosity, maybe even confusion. But you are not required to respond immediately. You are not required to match their intensity or mirror their emotional state. Instead, you have the ability to pause, to understand what is happening beneath the surface. Because what they are expressing is not just about the present moment, it is about everything that led up to it. It is about the realization they went through, the emotions they processed, and the clarity they reached before taking this step. When you understand that, the moment becomes easier to navigate. You may also begin to reflect on your own feelings in that moment. Because their action does not just reveal something about them, it reveals something about you. It shows you where you stand now, how you feel about the connection, and whether what they are expressing aligns with what you feel at this stage. You may realize that your perspective has changed during the silence. Or you may feel that something is still there, something worth exploring further. Either way, your response will come from your own clarity, not from their urgency. This is what makes this moment powerful. It is not just about their action, it is about your awareness meeting their realization. At the same time, there may be a temptation to respond quickly, especially if their words carry a lot of emotion. But this is where patience becomes important. You are not required to decide everything in one moment. You are allowed to take time, to process, to understand what this means for you before responding. Because the way you respond will shape what happens next. This is not a moment of pressure. It is a moment of choice. You are not being forced into anything. You are being given clarity, information, and an opportunity to respond in a way that aligns with your own understanding. And that is what defines this stage. It is no longer about what they will do, that part has already happened or is about to happen. It is about what you will do with what has been revealed. Because once the silence is broken and everything is out in the open, there is no going back to how things were before. The dynamic has changed. The truth is visible. And now, everything that follows will be shaped by the choices made in this exact moment, making this one of the most important turning points in your connection. Now everything begins to settle into a deeper level of understanding, where the intensity that once surrounded this situation slowly transforms into clarity, and this is where you start to fully see what all of this was leading to from the very beginning. What once felt confusing, unpredictable, and emotionally heavy no longer has the same power over you. Instead, it becomes something you can observe with a calm and steady perspective, something you can understand without being overwhelmed by it. The silence, the distance, the way their emotions built over time, and the moment they finally chose to act, it all starts to make sense when you look at it from this place of awareness. You begin to realize that this was never just about communication stopping or starting again. It was about what that silence revealed. It created space for them to recognize what they didn't fully understand before. It forced them to confront emotions they had not acknowledged. And at the same time, it gave you the opportunity to step back, to detach from the constant interaction, and to develop your own clarity without being influenced by their presence. And now that everything has come to the surface, you are no longer standing in uncertainty. You are standing in clarity. You can now see the connection for what it truly is, not what it appeared to be before. You can understand the difference between what was assumed and what is real. And that clarity is what gives you strength, not strength over them or over the situation, but strength within yourself. You are no longer reacting to something you do not understand. You are choosing based on something you now see clearly. The way they acted, the way they broke the silence, the intensity behind it. All of it now has meaning when you understand the process they went through. It was not sudden. It was built over time, through repeated thoughts, through memories that refused to fade, through realizations that became stronger with each passing day. And now that they have acted, everything is out in the open. There is no more guessing, no more wondering what they feel or what they might do. That uncertainty is gone. And when uncertainty disappears, clarity takes its place. You may now find yourself looking at the situation differently, seeing both sides in a way that you couldn't before. You can understand their journey, the realization, the hesitation, the emotional build-up, and the eventual action. But you can also understand your own journey, the silence, the distance, the awareness you gained, and the perspective you developed during that time. And when you bring both of these understandings together, you reach a place where your decisions are no longer based on impulse or emotion alone. They are based on truth. You may realize that your feelings are not exactly the same as they were before. Time and distance have a way of changing perspective. You may feel that something is still there, something worth exploring now that everything is clear. Or you may feel that while the connection was meaningful, it no longer fits in the same way it once did. Both of these realizations are valid, because what matters is not what existed in the past, it is what exists now. And this is where your power lies. You are no longer being pulled into a situation you do not understand. You are standing in a place where you can choose, based on clarity, not confusion. This is no longer about reacting to what they did. It is about deciding what you want to do with what has been revealed. You may also begin to feel a sense of calm replacing the intensity that once surrounded everything. Not because everything is perfectly resolved, but because you are no longer uncertain. You are no longer questioning what this connection means or where it stands. You have seen it from both sides, and that understanding removes the confusion that once existed. And when confusion is gone, peace begins to take its place. As you move forward from here, you carry something valuable with you, not just the experience itself, but the awareness that came from it. You now understand how silence can reveal truth, how absence can create clarity, and how emotions that are left unspoken do not disappear, they grow until they are expressed. And this understanding will stay with you, shaping how you approach future connections, how you communicate, and how you recognize what is real and meaningful. This moment was never just about them taking a bold step. It was about both of you reaching a point where everything became clear. And now that it is clear, the next step is entirely yours, and whatever you choose will come not from confusion or pressure, but from a place of deep understanding that was built through everything you have just experienced. Now everything has reached its final stage, where what once felt uncertain, emotionally intense, and filled with unanswered questions begins to settle into something clear, grounded, and fully understood. And this is where you realize that everything that happened between you and your soulmate was not random, but part of a process that revealed something that could not have been seen any other way. The silence, the distance, the memories that resurfaced, the realization that grew inside them, and the bold step they finally took, all of it was connected, all of it was leading to this moment of clarity. When everything was normal, when communication flowed easily, there was no reason to question what the connection truly meant. It simply existed, comfortable and familiar, without needing explanation. But the moment that flow was interrupted, everything changed. The silence created space, and within that space, awareness began to form. It removed the routine, the distractions, and the assumption that everything would continue as it always had. And in that stillness, the truth began to reveal itself. They began to understand what they didn't fully recognize before. They saw the value of the connection, the depth of what was shared, and the meaning behind moments that once felt ordinary. And you, at the same time, were given the space to step back, to observe, to gain your own perspective without being influenced by their presence. And now, standing at this point, everything is visible. Nothing is hidden anymore. The silence has been broken, the truth has been expressed, and the connection is no longer something uncertain or undefined. You can see it clearly for what it is, not what it seemed to be before. And this is where everything changes, because clarity replaces confusion. You are no longer reacting to something you don't understand. You are responding from a place of awareness. And that awareness gives you something powerful, the ability to choose your direction without being influenced by intensity or pressure. You may now look at the connection with a completely different perspective, one that is not shaped by assumptions or expectations, but by what you have actually experienced and understood. You can recognize what was real, what was missing, and what has now been revealed. And with that recognition comes freedom. The freedom to decide what this connection means to you now, without being pulled by the emotions of the moment. You are no longer in a place where you feel uncertain or unsure. You are in a place where you can observe everything calmly, understand it fully, and respond in a way that aligns with who you are now. You may realize that there is still something there, something worth exploring now that everything is honest and clear. Or you may realize that while the connection was meaningful, it belonged to a different time, a different version of both of you, and it no longer fits in the same way. Both of these realizations are valid, because the purpose of this moment was never to force a specific outcome. It was to reveal the truth. And once the truth is visible, the outcome becomes your choice. You may also begin to understand something deeper about connections themselves, that timing matters, that awareness does not always come at the same moment for both people, and that sometimes distance is what allows truth to be seen clearly. This does not make the connection less real. In many ways, it makes it more real, because it has been tested, revealed, and understood in a way that simple, continuous interaction could never achieve. And this understanding is something you carry forward with you. It shapes how you see relationships, how you communicate, and how you recognize what is genuine and what is not. As you move forward from here, you do so with a sense of calm that replaces the intensity that once surrounded everything. Not because everything is perfectly resolved, but because you are no longer uncertain. You are no longer questioning what this connection means or where it stands. You have seen it from both sides, and that understanding removes the confusion that once existed. And when confusion is gone, peace begins to take its place. This is the true outcome of everything that has happened, not just their bold step, not just their realization, but your clarity. Because clarity is what allows you to move forward without hesitation, without doubt, and without being influenced by emotions you do not fully understand. It allows you to trust yourself, to trust your perspective, and to trust the decisions you make from this point onward. And that is what matters most. Because no matter what direction this situation takes, you are no longer in a place where things are happening to you without your understanding. You are in a place where you can see, choose, and move forward with confidence, knowing that whatever comes next will not be something uncertain, it will be something you have consciously decided based on everything you now understand.